Make eye contact, make pauses, pace yourself. If you're a PM, you've heard these kind of public speaking tips countless times, but you're gonna need to take it to the next level. That's right, today we're talking strategic communications. These are the advanced level speaking skills that you're gonna need as a product manager, because now you're not speaking just at one event or one presentation. You're building your communication over the course of weeks and even months so that you can achieve your ultimate goal and you can align large groups of stakeholders to work together with you as a team. So we're gonna need some next level skills for this. I'll take you through some ideas around knowing your audience and understanding who you're talking to, aligning them towards your goal and aligning them towards a shared vision, and then just some techniques to make this faster and more efficient as a system. The starting point for strategic communication for a product manager actually begins with writing. There's really no replacement for the way that writing makes you fully articulate the most complex part of your thought. A lot of people like to do bullet points or slide decks, but writing forces you to write out full, complete sentences. It doesn't allow you to ignore the difficult parts of the idea or things that you can't quite answer. And so just sit down, write out that 1-pager or that 6-pager, and work through everything until you feel like this document fully articulates everything that you want to say about what this is and why we're doing it. Once you feel great about your document, that's going to lay the foundation for all of the future communication that you're going to have. So make sure that you take the time to do that writing in the beginning, share it to other people through Google Docs or something else for feedback and comments, and that will really set you up for success as you move into the presentations and all the stakeholder alignment because you took the time to do that hard thinking and explain everything to the depth that it really needs to be. All right, let's start with the concept of knowing your audience and what that looks like for you as a PM. The fundamental principle of this is understanding that different people have different goals and motivations based on many different factors. And what you need to do is do the due diligence to understand those motivations and find a way to align your goals with theirs. It's kind of like when you apply to jobs. Even though you have one set of experience, you're definitely not sending the same resume to different companies. You're finding a way to understand what that company is looking for and then matching your experience and pulling the most relevant things out so that they can see your value more clearly. Then you're tailoring that for every single company that you're applying to. How does this look in the teams that you're working with? We're going to take an example. Let's say there's a PM called Benjamin that is trying to get a feature out the door. This alignment will happen on many levels, so let's start from the top. Benjamin is probably working with many different groups to define what the feature is. That might start with user experience to understand what are the UX principles and how is it going to work and what is the customer experience going to be like. Next, there might be brand. So brand strategy, how does it fit in with the brand strategy? How is it going to be communicated to the larger audience and those kind of things? And then engineers. They want to understand from the user experience, what exactly is supposed to be happening and how we're going to go about building that. So these are all the many different things that Ben has to think about as he puts together his plan for the feature. However, when he talks to one of those groups, he definitely doesn't want to be, saying every single thing that he ever had to think about the feature. Instead, he's going to be understanding, where is this team in the organization and how can I narrow my scope and align my focus with what that group normally thinks about. So if he's talking to engineers, forget the brand strategy, forget the UX principles, and let's focus on what is the exact experience that needs to exist, and then how are we going to go about building that in an efficient way. That's going to be the scope of the conversation he has there. So that's kind of the first level of knowing your audience, is just organizational team. Now, underneath that, we get to the next level, which is what is the history of this team and how does that shape their motivations and also their triggers or their pain points. So for example, let's say this engineering team Ben is working with has struggled with tech debt. They made some, decisions in the past that caused them to get bitten in the butt today. And they're really thinking about how can we get rid of tech debt? How can we create scalable, sustainable architecture that will build a platform for us to move more swiftly in the future? So as Benjamin comes in and he did the work to know that, he can say, look how my feature contributes to the platform, look how it's going to allow us to build tools to fight against the tech debt, and look how it can be scaled. So he can really cater the conversation towards the kind of thing that this team wants to hear and the way that they're thinking. And he's going to be able to alleviate their concerns very quickly because he's done the work beforehand to understand, their environment, the landscape of that group. So this part of the understanding really starts on your first day. As you're building relationships and getting to know different people, immediately start learning about the history of their team and their goals and their different pain points. So now, he's focused it onto the org. He understands their motivations. Now you get to a third level, which is the individual level. I think this has been called in the past something like learning styles, but pretty much different types of people tend to ask different types of questions. So, some people are focused on the why. Do we need this feature? Couldn't we do something else? Is this the right thing to be doing? Other people are focused on the what. So, what is this exactly? How is it going to work? Can you clarify the specifics? They ask a lot of clarifying questions about what exactly this is and what it's trying to accomplish. And then there are the how people. They're like, oh, are we using this framework or that framework to build that? What's going to happen after you click there? Are you sure we have the infrastructure we need to accomplish this? They don't really care why this is happening. They don't need to get pulled into all of that, but they want to know the details. And so as you get to know people, you learn what their style tends to be. And when you come in to talk to them, you can predict what kind of questions are you going to get and be able to answer those questions more fully and more quickly. The last piece of knowing your audience I want to talk about is around thinking ahead and identifying questions that will come up. So if you know people's goals and people's styles really well, that helps you a lot to be able to predict what kind of questions are going to be coming in with. There's various degrees of preparation that you can do for this. So if you have like a routine meeting with your engineering team, you can just imagine, okay, let's say I'm the lead engineer, what kind of questions would I normally ask? And then just give yourself that opportunity to think through the questions that you can anticipate, and then it will be that much easier during the meeting. This gets especially important as we move into executive communications. That is a group of people whose time is very limited, and you don't have many chances to meet with them and get your point across. Additionally, as you meet with them, it's usually a high-stakes communication. So you need them to make a key decision, you need them to unlock resources for you, and you really need things to go right. One technique I use for this is actually taking those questions that I anticipate them asking. So first of all, I need to do the due diligence to know their goals, understand what they're dealing with organizationally and so forth. But, understand each stakeholder and what they might come up with or what questions they might run into. Then you can actually prepare slides and place them in the appendix that answer all of those questions. So let's say, the finance executive is going to have an issue with this particular topic and I anticipate a question on it. I can prepare that slide, and if it comes up, I'll just jump straight to that slide and be able to answer in a efficient and very convincing way. Whereas if I didn't do that preparation, it might create a hitch in my meeting, derail everything else, and then cause that meeting not to be successful. So for executive meetings, it's really critical to anticipate these questions and do work that you're very prepared for them. So now we're moving into the space of how to create alignment within your audience. Let's continue sticking with this example of the executive team meeting. So let's say that Benjamin worked with the engineering team to explain the how and worked with the UX team to get the UX principles aligned, and he just got all the teams ready to go on their spaces, and everybody is super on board with this feature and excited to jump into development. He's preparing a slide deck for this key decision-making meeting, and he wants to make sure it goes right. So this is where the concept of pre-meetings comes in. So you have this really big decision-making meeting, and it's up to Benjamin to do the due diligence that all of the pieces are in place before that meeting happens. So the goal of one of these key meetings is that it's not really a place where people learn new information in terms of the executives. It's actually should be just a formality where people acknowledge that everyone else is aligned and check the box and sign off. So in order to accomplish that, he needs to take the time to understand where are the issues going to come from and how can he proactively resolve them. So for example, let's say the product leader was the one that asked for this feature in the first place. He kind of knows that everything is going to be fine. Okay, that doesn't require any extra attention. The marketing group, this is a new feature for them. They haven't heard about it. So he's actually going to meet with the marketing manager and talk them through this feature so that they can start to socialize it within their organization and maybe even talk about it briefly to their head of marketing and get a sense of, is there any issue or concern or not? After he got that sign of affirmation back, Ben knows he's good to go with the marketing team. So finally, let's say he's presenting to the finance leadership. So he does the same thing with the finance team, and he hears that there's concerns about budget, there's concerns about profitability, and a bunch of other stuff. That means that he knows, okay, this is a place that I need to work on and do a series of meetings with the finance team to work all of those kinks out. So he sets up some time, one-on-one or one-on-four with the leader of finance team, and he talks them through the feature and gets all their key concerns. Over the series of, 1 to 3 meetings, he actually does work to resolve those concerns, think of solutions to get around them, and other strategies that can appease, and align with the goals of that team. So then after he feels confident the finance team has buy-in, only then is he going to be ready to actually go in with that big group in the key decision-making meeting and feel happy that everything is going to get signed off. If he doesn't know that with a pretty high confidence before the meeting, it's going to be a waste of everybody's time to have that meeting at all. And so doing that due diligence to align your audience is extremely critical for high-stakes conversations. Okay, now that Benjamin has a really good sense of who his audience is and what their motivations are, he can focus on making his thesis more powerful and more effective. One really important way to do this is by narrowing your scope. So people, they are busy, they have limited bandwidth, and you can't give them all the information in the world, even if it supports your point, because they just don't have the energy to process all of that. And so, knowing your audience allows you to focus in on the things that they care about. But even within that, you need to pinpoint, where is the bullseye? What is the most important message to get across? And get rid of all the other stuff. So even if he is explaining, why his feature matches the platform concept, why it's scalable, he's going to need to pick one best argument for that, or maybe two, but not six, not more, and really get across that main point. Then people will have the attention span that they need to engage with that, and they're not going to get distracted or derailed by any of the other pieces. And so narrowing your scope and also keeping to the appropriate level of detail and preventing from people rat holing on some side topic or some, UI or something like that is going to be really critical to making the conversation move along toward the goal that you need. So for example, if he's showing off the new feature with some demos, people start asking questions about buttons and like, the button is red, why is the button over there? He needs to have the skill to say, hey, this is really about understanding the business goals of this and the technology platform that we need to use for this. The design isn't set. That's not the focus of today's conversation. Let's focus on this and really skillfully guide the conversation in the direction that is going to be most valuable for the organization. So now, as you've heard, Ben has had a lot of different meetings and a lot of conversations with different groups that are really based around a similar concept. So we're getting here to the last tip of today's video, which is to build your roadshow early. What that means is once you finish that first stage of, writing out your idea in whole sentences as a document that people then can give feedback on, once you're confident that this is something you want to push, you want to move forward with, that's when you start to build a roadshow that you can reuse and share with lots of people as you begin to move into the stakeholder alignment phase. So for me, this usually looks like a deck or a PowerPoint presentation that I build out, which answers the key questions that all the teams tend to ask. Why are we doing this feature? What is this feature? What is the customer experience? How is it going to work? And when are we releasing it and who's doing it? That is the type of thing that most people want to have at least some sort of information on. And so I build this foundational template that I pretty much reuse for every single group that I present to, and then take a spin on it for them verbally by explaining the deck in a certain way that aligns with their goals. As I go along, I keep adding new content and new information as I pick up from questions that they might ask or things I didn't think of beforehand. And this saves me a lot of time because, number one, I have something reusable that I don't have to build a new deck every single time I talk to someone. Number two, I can send it out to whoever asks or whoever wants to know more who isn't in my meetings. Number three, I collect lots of those questions so that I can do a better presentation next time, every time, and I don't have to practice it every single time because I've done it before. And then finally, by the time I get to that key executive meeting, that decision-making meeting or resource unlocking meeting, I have done this deck so many times, I could do it in my sleep. And so there's really no concern about, my presentation quality or my ability to remember the content being the thing that holds me back. So I definitely recommend that as soon as you move out of that writing and revision phase, make this template early and use it to inform all of the future conversations that you have as you align the stakeholders on your feature. All right, guys, that's it. That is just scratching the surface of some of the strategic communication and advanced level tips that I've learned over the last couple of years. I have a lot more to say on this topic, so please like and comment if this is something you're interested in and you want to have me make more videos on or you have questions on, because I've definitely picked up a lot of tips like this and I'm continuously improving my presentation skills and my communication skills with almost everything I do every day. So this is definitely a huge topic for product managers and definitely a fun one. I love sharing the work that I'm doing with other teams. I love the collaborative aspect of working through all of this. So it's definitely a lot of fun to do on the job as well. Anyway, I hope that was helpful and see you next time on Product Chat. Bye!